and welcome to Best After Date, where we talk to fascinating folks about how it all gets better after 50. Today, I had a chat with Patricia Fenty, who went from pharmacy to having a successful YouTube channel as a content creator. I learned a lot from this conversation. She's got some great advice for anyone pondering doing the same thing, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. So, Patricia, welcome, and thank you for being my second ever guest on the podcast.
Oh, you're most welcome.
So I was hoping today that we could talk about your journey from where you started, and I'll let you go into what you were trained for career-wise originally, and this fascinating journey that you take to where you are now.
Okay. I'm trained as a pharmacy technician, and I was certified in 1986, and I did that for a long time. At least 20 years. I don't know exactly how long.
Oh, it was that long.
It was over 20 years, actually, that I was a pharmacy technician. And, and it was a good career, and parts of it were rewarding. But when I was about, I have to think of the ages, I guess it was probably about 10 years ago, 10 or 12 years ago, my husband got cancer. And he had an irrigation business, and he got sick right at the time where it was the most important time of the year, where all the irrigation systems had to be prepared for the winter. And it's also where, he'd make a third of his income for the year. And it was really hard, and he was having to go through his cancer treatments. So, he made more in that 3 months than I made in the whole year as a pharmacy technician. So I left my job and stepped into doing this service part with his helper. And really all he needed was someone to drive the truck and the compressor, and the other fellow knew everything to do. So I went into it just really being the driver. And lo and behold, I really took to the irrigation. I loved being outside. I loved being in all these gardens. Only dealt with, maybe 6 or 10 clients a day instead of 250. Mostly you don't see the people. And then, so we got through the winter, and then the following spring, once my husband had come out of recovery of cancer, he was still pretty weak. So I decided to carry on working with him because he needed to work part days, and sometimes he could only do 4 hours, some days he couldn't work at all.
Right.
So rather than having an employee that you had to sort of offer full days wages to 5 days a week, I was more adaptable. So we did that. And so I did that with him for, I guess, 6 years. And then he turned 65 and decided to retire and sell the business. And so we did that. And that was, I guess, 5 years ago now.
Right.
Yeah, so we retired, and so I was still looking for something to do. And we also moved a year after he retired. We moved to a new town, and so I thought, well, what could I do? And I have all these things that I'm passionate about, creative things. I'm very creative.
Can I jump in there?
Yeah.
Did you, if I remember correctly, did you have other businesses that you had along the way that you kind of did while you were doing pharmacy?
Yeah, so I did, I had at one time, I was doing some hand blended incense and perfumes and things like that. And that was sort of at the beginning of, online stores and stuff like that. And so I would ship this stuff, basically all over North America. I did a little bit to Europe, but
right.
But what happened was the shipping became really cost prohibitive, and the shipping was more than the products themselves, and it was very persnickety, and so I ended up just letting that go. And I've had other ventures. I had a drapery business. I made drapes in the past, and
it's fascinating, just the sort of entrepreneurial.
It was always it was always there. And, the drapery business and the decorative painting, I was actually doing really well with that. But then my first marriage imploded and I had to get a job. And especially because so many of my clients were from my ex-husband's
Jeez.
side of
Oops.
so, but I think out of fear, I let that go because I wanted the security. And so I was working in pharmacy again after that. So when I was doing some of these things, I wasn't working in pharmacy. I sort of, was on and off and on and off.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And always trying to sort of go into some sort of creative venture. And so in the time that I was working with my now husband in the irrigation business, I did write a book called Healing Through Creative Expression, using intuitive painting and storytelling.
Right.
It's not a popular book.
But it's a powerful book for the
It
people.
is, and I've had many people write to me really lovely testimonials of how it changed their lives.
Is it still available?
It is. It's
Okay,
still,
we'll make sure we get that in the description.
right.
So in case anyone wants to check it out.
Yeah, it's available on Amazon.
Yeah.
And I self-published, and I do want to redo it though. The perfectionist in me wants to redo the images and stuff because I'm much better at photography. But that's
Right.
kind of where I started, learning to do some sort of, online stuff, self-publishing and, photo editing. And I did it.
Yeah,
Really
well, let's just stay with that just for a second, because that's big. I mean, lots of people talk about writing a book and never, ever, ever do it because it's too hard, don't know what the steps are. So maybe we just take a couple minutes just to talk about that, because it kind of does segue into what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
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 How did you, were you completely self-taught? Did you hire someone to help you? What did that look like?
So there was, I took a course on Udemy, which is an online learning platform on how to publish your own book. And I followed through that program, learning all the steps and how to, how to organize the book, how to format it, how to design your cover, how to do the whole self-publishing thing. And it was a very good course, very informative. And excuse me, we can put a link to that course below if people are interested.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
We'll do that.
And then I did hire an editor to edit the book. And well, I hired 2 editors actually. The first one didn't work out. She really just ripped my voice out of the book. It was technically,
that's always the danger, isn't it?
Yeah. And she was technically correct, but it was just very dry.
I was gonna say it turned it into a manual or something.
Yeah, like a manual type thing.
Yeah.
So I found another lovely editor, and she really got what I was trying to do, and so we worked together, and so yeah, I had it edited. And so the thing with that though is I think I'm like a lot of creative people in that I'm really good at creating stuff, but I totally suck at marketing. Can I say that?
You can absolutely say that, because you're not alone. Absolutely not alone. I think that's probably the rule more than the exception.
Yeah. And and I just didn't have at the time, I didn't have the confidence, the self-confidence, the knowledge on really how to pull off the marketing piece of it. And so it's out there, and it's it's still helping people, but yeah, it's not a bestseller.
but yeah.
Make
sure people, because it is a really unique voice.
It is, and it's a very powerful tool, and the idea of using painting, and it combines these things of journal writing, storytelling, intuitive painting as a way to process trapped emotions or emotions that you do know about. It's a really powerful process. So
right. Now, did that come out of another modality, or is that something you just came up with as your own?
It came in part out of I have the book here. This probably backwards. Writing Down Your Soul.
It's good.
by Janet Connor.
Oh,
And this is about intuitive writing. So it was in part from that. It was part just doing intuitive painting that I found it was very therapeutic, and I had just sort of spontaneously come up with this process.
fascinating. Wow.
Yeah, yeah, and it's time consuming though. If you know,
Right.
to do the process does take a bit of time. The big piece that I worked on took me weeks.
Mhm. But any transformation sort of, well, not, I shouldn't say that. Some transformations are, but generally speaking, they're kind of slow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
As they should be, because how do you or reveal all of those things? Yeah, it can be kind of painful if you do it quickly.
It can. I agree. You have to unpack it gently.
Yeah.
And with the piece that is done, you can go back to that time and time again and look at it, and you see things in it that you didn't see before.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it is. It's
Yeah.
a really fascinating process.
So you were working with the paintings. So where did it morph to from there?
So then, while I was working with my husband in the irrigation business, I had come across EFT tapping.
I can't remember where that fit in the timeline, but yeah.
Yeah, and I was working with him, and we had actually gotten quite busy, and we'd hired a helper. So I became sort of the third wheel, in that I was doing more the administrative stuff and coming to help on bigger jobs and running for parts and things like that.
Mhm.
So I started training to be an EFT practitioner, and also knowing that my husband was going to retire, that this might be something that I would want to do. As
Now, for those who don't know what EFT is, it's maybe you could just.
Yeah, so EFT is emotional freedom techniques, and it's a technique of using tapping on certain acupressure points on the body while addressing an emotional issue. And there's a ton of amazing scientific evidence that supports that helps to release the emotion out of the body, so that you may still have a memory of a traumatic event, but you no longer have the emotional reaction.
Yeah, it's fascinating,
Yes.
fascinating work.
I use it all the time. Yeah. So I did train as a practitioner, and I started a practice. Oh my gosh, I can't believe what I've done here.
You've got a lot of, that's just what I think, it's a fascinating conversation. Yeah.
And so I was working as an EFT practitioner. And while I'm doing all of this, I have been living with something called central sensitivity syndrome, which is an autoimmune disorder, which is essentially dysregulation in the brain that sends signals to various parts of your body that are giving the wrong message. So I'm super sensitive to sound and light and fragrance and like molds and things like that. And I'm particularly sensitive to pain. So I have a lot of pain, a lot of fatigue.
Right.
And I've had this really, I actually have traced it back to a car accident I was in when I was 12 years old. But I was really athletic, sort of tomboy, and I had a strong constitution. But as I've gotten older, my constitution's wearing out. And so this is where so much of the healing stuff has come into my life, because I have been searching really since my 20s,
Right.
a path to relieve myself from all of this, these issues that I have. And like, I have irritable larynx syndrome and irritable bowel syndrome. And, I mean, it's ridiculous. I have like chronic peripheral pain on my feet. So it makes it really hard for me to walk or stand for any length. So the tapping was just one of these modalities that I came to, something I thought I could do for work. but it turned out I actually just didn't have the physical energy to do that and to hold the space.
I assume it takes a lot to
It's,
hold that space in a supportive way for people.
yeah, well, we'll get into this maybe
Yeah.
a little bit if I get to it, but I think what would happen is I'd be extremely exhausted after a session on Zoom. If I did belly to belly sessions,
Interesting.
I wasn't so exhausted.
That's interesting.
Yes.
As we talk on Zoom.
Yes. Yes. Because something, and I'll talk about this a little later. Yeah, so it's the intensity and the focus that you have when you're on in a Zoom meeting that is different than if you're in the presence of someone. And being in the presence of someone is much easier. It's like you have to just really focus. Like I found I focused to make sure that I was catching, little nuances and that the client was okay.
Yeah.
And
Because you're right. It's much more difficult to get that via a screen for sure.
yeah. So there was that piece, but there was just also the fact that I didn't have the vitality for it.
Right.
So then, so there is my passion about healing, passion about creativity, and passion about nurturing. And so then once my husband and I moved over here to this town where we live now, I thought, well, maybe I can bring together all of these passions. And, I was inspired by a content creator, and I thought, well, maybe I could do a YouTube channel and blog about the topics of create, nurture, heal. And so I started doing that 3 years ago.
See, what, 3 years?
Yeah.
Seems like longer.
It does.
Probably for you more so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's, and so by that time I was 53 when I launched into this crazy idea to become a content creator on YouTube and to do an accompanying blog along with whatever I recorded as a video tutorial. I also write a written blog with pictures and directions and like that.
Right. So where did you, so to bring those three topics together, what did that look like in the beginning?
So in the beginning, I started sharing, I would write articles about healing, different, and articles about creativity and healing. And I was doing some guided meditations. So that was sort of the healing part. And then the nurturing part, I was sharing recipes for, homemade skincare products, some food recipes, bath salts, things like that. And then on the creative end, I was doing things like wire wrapping and dot painting and crocheting.
And crocheting.
And yeah, and a bit of sewing and like that. And that's how it started off. And it was called Create, Nurture, Heal.
So maybe I'm trying to figure out where to go with that. What was the process that not the process that unfolded, the evolution that unfolded as you started? And did you do a course, or was it completely self on how to most efficiently do a YouTube channel without falling down a rabbit hole somewhere?
Well, the great thing about YouTube is everything you need to know is on YouTube. So, I literally could YouTube every step that I needed to know about, how do I set up my YouTube channel? How do I set up a business account? How do I claim the URL? All of that is available. You just have to search for it.
Right.
I was self-taught, and I just went through all the steps of setting that all up. And I have done my own websites in the past, and so I was familiar with WordPress and doing a website. So I was able to create a blog and set that all up as a place to park the sort of written part of all this. Right. So that I had already had some knowledge in. I had also created a couple of videos, a couple of courses on Udemy. And Udemy is that online teaching platform. And I had a course on how to crochet a bohemian poncho, well, I still do.
Yeah.
And a course on EFT tapping, how to do EFT tapping in a certain methodical process.
Right.
Piece procedure. So I had some.
It was prior to the YouTube.
And that was prior to YouTube. So I had learned, how to film and edit and, create video content.
Right.
And I put that on Udemy. So I learned that there. So it was actually fairly easy to transfer that over to creating YouTube videos.
I would think so. Yeah. Yeah. Outside of all the marketing stuff, right? The
right. Yes.
Keywords and all the things that go with that.
Yes. Yeah.
So when you started out, did you have a vision for it, or was it just kind of, let's see where it goes?
My vision was to bring together these three modalities of create, nurture, heal, because to me it felt like just this really sort of warm and nurturing basket of pieces of our life that are really important to incorporate, and especially if you're on a healing journey of some sort and dealing with any kind of past traumas or whatever, if and if you're learning self-care and self-nurturing, it just seemed like bringing together these different sort of the creativity as a way to bring nurturing into your life and healing, that it just seemed like they would all weave together into a really nice cozy basket.
And so did they?
No.
So what happened there? How do you think?
Well, everyone says if you do any, research on how, if you're planning to do a YouTube channel, they always say, be specific, be specific, be specific.
Meaning pick a small
Just
niche.
have one genre and stick to that.
Yeah.
And so then what happened was there just wasn't actually interest in the creative and nurturing part of stuff. There wasn't interest in the various crafts and things like that. And what just organically took off was the crochet. And
interesting.
Yeah.
You were just looking at your stats and people who were responding, comments.
Yes.
Got it.
And, my channel isn't a big channel. Like at this point, I have just over 15,000 subscribers. But, it's all my top videos are crochet videos, and, some of them have over 100,000 views, which for my size channel is
absolutely
at a reasonable amount. But some of my like wire wrapping tutorials and stuff have like, 200 views and surprisingly, some of my meditations are doing really well.
Yeah.
So that actually was an interesting piece, that the meditations have done quite well, but the crochet has done like way better.
You need like crochet meditations or
well, crochet is like
it's very
it is
so interesting.
Yeah. And also so many people comment that my voice is really relaxing.
Yes.
So they enjoy listening to my tutorials and doing the crochet. So that's kind of how that morphed. And the other thing was, and this is where we'll talk about the computer thing, being on the computer, is that what I found was that my brain was getting very tired, and I was starting to have a lot of cognitive issues. Creating all that content in the beginning, and I started off doing 3 tutorials a week, which was the recommended amount. Very quickly, I couldn't do that.
So how much? So sorry, just to give some context, how many hours did that look like per?
Yeah. So I've tried to really figure it out, but I lose track. But certainly, filming a tutorial, editing it, I have to voice over all my videos because I make so many mistakes because of some of the cognitive problems that I have. Then, remembering to take the photographs of all the steps, which I had sticky notes everywhere. Take photos, take photos. I finally learned how to grab them from the video content. So
Right.
take pictures
Yeah.
anymore.
Right.
Still, it's a huge job to capture those images from the video content, edit those in Photoshop, put them into the blog, and then write the directions and the pattern. Those two pieces together for one project, I would say takes at least 30 hours.
I was going to say, yeah.
For one project. You know, people that watch these things for free and go onto the blogs for free, and you know, we get paid for the advertisements that are put on there. I think people just don't realize how much work goes into these projects.
Not for the kind of thing that you were doing, or really highly produced videos. Absolutely. There's some that it clearly there's not much went into it. But true. The ones that do, you're right. I don't think unless you've done it, you would ever, or are a creative person overall, right? Who works on those kind of projects yourself. Yeah, you'd have no idea.
Yeah. And, you know, maybe some of these people that are putting out that much content have, you know, they're creating the content, but maybe, you know, their husband or something is doing all the editing.
Yeah. And
if they can, you know, say what they want and say it properly while they're recording it, then you don't have to do the voiceover. Right. You know, I have to voice over everything.
Right.
I'm calling single crochets, double crochets, and I'm gagging. You know, I just could, you know,
oh my goodness,
I make so many mistakes on the initial video. So, and then I write on, after I've edited the video, I write where, you know, sometimes people put notes up on their videos. So I have big notes that are the new narration that I read to make sure I get it right. And then I delete all that.
Got it. Yeah, it's huge. And I can't, having never done it myself, in that kind of a genre, there's a reason why it's taken me this long to
it is, you know, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So what happened was I found that by doing so many different types of projects, so doing a dot painting, doing a wire wrapping, doing a sewing project, doing a crochet project, that my brain, my mind was being challenged to teach all these different crafts. Because you're kind of, when you do a project, you're kind of doing the project as you're teaching it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, because otherwise you're making the projects twice.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, I know how to do the crafting, but, you know, you're sort of you're doing it as you're teaching it.
Right.
So I found it very disjointed. And that also then led into the morphing of doing just crochet. And it also led into doing simple crochet for beginners, really simple projects.
So when you started out, you were doing more intermediate, advanced?
I have this I have this really beautiful bohemian scarf and hat. And I'm like, oh, I can't believe, I mean, it's a beautiful pattern, but it's so complicated. And I'm like, what were you thinking? Yeah, so I very quickly went to doing simple projects. I went from doing 3 a week to 1 a week, to 1 every 2 weeks, to 1 every 3 weeks. And even that, what seemed to happen is my cognition was getting more and more affected, because I also have post-concussion disorder, which comes under that umbrella. You know, everything's exaggerated. So I've had a couple of big concussions, and that's left me with speech impediment and migraines. When I'm really tired, when my brain gets tired.
Yeah.
So what happened was I started to get, those symptoms became more and more acute, more aggravated, and, you know, I probably ended up with a bit of personality disorder. But clearly I was suffering, and my husband he kept saying to me, you're spending too much time on the computer. You're spending too much time on the computer. So in addition to doing all of the content creation, there's the marketing piece of it.
Yeah.
So for me, I put my content on Pinterest. So I'm creating pins for and directing people to the content. And I'm having to be very active on Pinterest with that. And, that takes a lot of work. And I put it on Facebook. I've just started doing Instagram. I'm not very good at that. Um, and
A whole other animal, that one.
yeah, and like you say, there's the SEO and the keywording and all of that. And I've done okay with that. I think, a lot of people are much, much better.
Mhm.
So my channel has been slow to grow, but it has grown and it's doing moderately well.
Yeah.
And yeah, so there's that other part of it, and responding to comments and emails, and there's a lot of background work that goes behind it as
Yeah.
well,
If you're doing it yourself.
if you're doing it yourself. Yeah. So essentially I've burned out.
Mhm.
And so what I did was I went on a computer diet, and I limited myself to just an hour a day to see what would happen. And I feel so much better.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Not surprising. Not surprising at all.
yeah. So we've discussed this before, I'm going to actually stop creating content for my channel. But I've got 140 videos and probably about 130 blog posts, and and I'm just going to keep the content going and keep creating pins and redirecting people back there, because there's always new people coming, there's new crocheters, um, and I do really love to create patterns that people can do for the first time, and it's really beautiful.
Right.
That they don't look like a beginner
Yeah,
crocheter.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So what is the or maybe you can probably answer this, I'm sure you must have looked it up, the wisdom around that, about taking the content that you've invested 3 years into making, not making any brand new content, and having that be a library essentially on a YouTube. How does that, is there any conventional wisdom around that?
Well, I don't know exactly. I haven't done any research around
Okay.
that, but I do know of content creators that are in my genre that are no longer creating content, but their channels continue to grow. They continue to,
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah. And even after they're not creating content for whatever reason that may be, the content is there and they're still getting activity on it. And, I mean, I don't know how this will unfold.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm gonna just leave it there and see what happens.
And will you continue to interact with people leaving comments and things?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll still
Right.
attract with the comments, and I get comments on Pinterest, and
I think that makes such a huge difference, when I'm looking at various channels, and I know there's all sorts of thoughts about this, right? If you start to comment, then you're committed to commenting to like everybody. And then if you've got tons of people following you, it can become a real boondoggle. Or you hire somebody to do it, but then it's not you.
That's
And
right.
it's clear it's not you. And the people who are on following you because of you are a little annoyed.
Yeah.
Right. So it's almost better to not comment at
Yeah.
all, or make the commitment to comment.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing because you start commenting when your channel is small.
Yes.
But I think people do understand there's sort of a tipping point.
Yeah.
At which the creator just can't keep up with the comments.
Yeah. What I find in a lot of them is that they'll make one or two, right, to the first 2 or 3 comments that come in, or the first handful, and then it stops, obviously, because if you've got 100 or 1,000 or 5,000 comments.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And one thing I did want to mention about comments, and if someone's thinking about becoming a content creator in whatever genre they are, they feel they have some gifts or talents or want to share, my advice would be, choose one thing that you're really passionate about, and be prepared for negative feedback.
So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. I've actually had very little negative feedback. but I have had some, and because you can moderate your comments, in YouTube, what you can do is you can put in keywords for moderation, so that if there's anything that is critical, you can put in sort of critical keywords,
Okay.
and that'll automatically go to a place for you to review before
Got it.
it doesn't always get there, but
Mm-hmm.
for the most part, it does. And so, there are trolls out there, and there are really negative.
Even in the world of crochet.
I know, but not many. And I will say, in the 3 years that I've been doing this, I've only had 2 comments that were clearly trolls. And I used to get the thumbs down, sort of, and I'm like, really? You give that a thumbs down? And I think it was last year sometime, YouTube stopped
Yes,
showing
they did.
the thumbs down, and that made a world of difference.
Yeah. Well, so do you still see them as a creator?
I still see them on my
Okay.
side,
But they're
but I
not
don't get
showing
nearly,
publicly.
yeah, I don't get nearly as many. Yeah. And so a
Interesting.
lot of my videos have 100% thumbs up.
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean,
oh yeah, but it's so weird. It's amazing that people will thumbs down on. It's like,
or make yeah, I don't the whole troll thing, I just don't understand.
yeah, the troll. So I think it really depends on the kind of stuff you're doing. So if you're going into any kind of spiritual teaching,
Mm-hmm.
be prepared.
I'm watching that with somebody right now. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're doing anything to do with sort of, highly sensitive empath or psychic, anything in that world,
Yeah.
you're going to attract trolls.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Crazy. I just think that's so fascinating. Someone would troll a crochet channel.
Well, it hasn't happened much.
No. What was the, if you don't mind, is it something do you remember what it was? I'm just curious because I can't wrap my head around it.
I don't remember exactly, but it was something along the lines of, I can't believe what an awful job you do of this, and you should be ashamed to be on YouTube, something like that. I mean, it was just really vile and mean. And I mean,
Oh
it was so ridiculous that,
my God. Funny.
I mean, I didn't take it seriously.
No.
And that's the thing, like, you cannot take negative comments or trolls seriously. I've had constructive criticism. I've had people say, I can't see this.
Yeah, which is valuable.
Yeah. And I'm so sorry. And I've actually at one point created another video to correct that. I had that happen once. And so,
Right. Of
sometimes,
course they're watching it for free, but
and I'm
being
narrating
constructive.
I'm narrating it exactly. And I'll say, I know this isn't very clear, but this is what we're doing.
Some people just have nothing better to do, I guess.
Yeah. And, and I am, at times I was creating this content, I was so exhausted. And, my husband had a pretty serious health event last year. And, just trying to keep up with the content while dealing with that.
So the pressure there to keep rolling it out, is that pretty intense?
It is, I find it is, and I'm only doing one every 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And what I'm starting to see is content creators that I follow are burning out.
Yeah. So was the original intent as a financial vehicle, or was it more just to be a creative vehicle?
I mean, it was because I was thinking, well, I'm only like 53. I've got, what is that, 12, 13 years before I start collecting, pension.
A little tiny bit that you
that you get. And, so looking at it financially is like, well, I have to make some sort of income.
Right.
And then my husband and I sat down and did the numbers. And we've been very fortunate in our real estate ventures. And we did the numbers, and I was like, I don't really have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So then it became this question of why am I, you know, sort of causing this stress on my brain while I have this. I mean, see, this is like I wouldn't, most people wouldn't deal with what I'm dealing with.
Right.
I'm
But
dealing.
there's lots of people who may too.
Yeah, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it is a lot of work, and focusing, on the computer and all that stuff is very tiring for the brain.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely have to pace yourself. And for me, it just became a question of, is it worth it to do this?
Right.
Because I have another venture that,
Oh,
well, when I wrote that book, I have a series, a book series, and it's like a spiritual fictional series. And it's called the Gabrielle series, and this has been brewing in me, and I know that that's something that's going to be written at some point, but I can't do that if my brain is so tired.
and doing both would be, yeah,
And I couldn't do both. Yeah. And
fascinating.
and it's this story of, people who have spiritual awakening through adversity. And yeah.
To keep us posted on that.
Yeah.
So was there part of it, of the YouTube venture, that you enjoyed?
I actually enjoy all of it. I love it's, it's quite a creative process, the whole
Right.
thing. And so I love the idea of coming up with the patterns, and then, filming it all, and then editing it all. And when I finish editing a video, it just, it feels really good, and I enjoy the process. Writing the blog, not quite so much. Certainly, yeah. And I mean, I like the editing. I like putting it all together, and yeah. So I mean, I really enjoy it, and it's just hard on my brain.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, maybe those skills with your book series, you could come in handy later on.
yeah, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would your, I mean, you've given us a few bits of advice, but for someone pondering starting a YouTube channel, even one that maybe isn't as involved as yours was, because yours was quite deep and complex with regard to the production that you had to do.
Yes.
What would be your top 3 tips for people?
I would say definitely choose a genre that's specific.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say do your homework. There's a lot of really great teachers on YouTube that teach you how to get your channel noticed,
Mm-hmm.
and all these sort of back end things. And I'm trying. There's one that I'm thinking of. I can't remember off the top of my head. So and don't be afraid to try something new, because what's the worst thing that can happen? It doesn't work. Like, and what's the best thing that can happen? It can be wildly successful.
Absolutely.
So I would say to not let any fears or inhibitions, or thinking that, oh, I can't do this, and I've never been good at blah 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 blah. We can learn anything.
Mm-hmm.
And we live in a time where everything is available pretty much for free for learning. But certainly I have taken courses on Udemy, and I've paid for courses, and I've paid for all different types of marketing courses and stuff like that, and I still suck at it. But you know there's so much out there that can support us in learning something new.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that especially as we get older, it's really important to challenge ourselves intellectually and keep learning new things. And I think of my dear friend Audrey, who passed away just at Christmas, close to her 104th birthday. And there's a phone ringing in the house.
Oh, no worries.
So thinking about my dear friend Audrey, who just passed away at the age of 104, she got a computer when she was 90.
Yeah.
and learned how to use a computer when she was 90. She taught craft classes, and first she would take the class and then she would decide that, she was better at it. So then she would end up teaching, and she
Oh,
was,
I love it.
stained glass and pottery and silk
Wow.
painting, and she was still teaching in her 90s
Yeah.
and learning and teaching.
Yeah.
And she was sharp as a tack.
I can't imagine ever not working. Can you imagine not
Yeah.
working at something?
Yeah, not working, not learning. And and I think as we get older, we might venture more into the areas that we're more passionate about,
Mhm.
that, maybe we're a little afraid to do when we're younger. And and it may work out and it may not work out, and that's fine.
Yep,
Just a process of uncovering.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So are you glad you did it?
Oh, yes.
Did that make that huge, huge investment that you it time wise, right?
Yeah, yeah. When I was retired, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was a time investment. And but yeah, I really enjoyed it. I don't regret it at all. And
Awesome.
I'm sad that I physically can't keep up with it.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
I-
I can
yeah.
see that. Would
Mm.
just to wrap, are you I don't know how to phrase this question, but it popped in my head, so I'm going to ask it. The person you were when you started, I mean, obviously you're the same person, but what would you say maybe transformed in you? Was there anything that you can say, yeah, after going through this process, I am more confident of my
Yeah,
skills,
absolutely.
comfortable?
Definitely, a lot of confidence that I gained along the way. And and it really actually expanded my crocheting skills.
Oh,
Um,
I guess it would. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I think it really sort of pushed my creative boundaries. And, um, I think also just the fact that I started that at the age of 53, not knowing where it would go or what it would do. And I don't really think it's the end of it either. Like, it might morph into something else
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah.
And I might come back to it. Once my brain has a chance to sort of settle down and regulate.
Right.
If I can get my brain to regulate and not be so hypersensitive to everything, then maybe I will come back to it.
And it will be there waiting for you.
Yeah, exactly. So who knows? And yeah, so I think just relaxing into the process. And at first I was too intense. And then I learned that I needed to just relax into it more so. And
I think that would be pretty normal though.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I got more comfortable and way more comfortable. My newsletter, it used to take me to do a newsletter, it would take me like a half a day to do a newsletter. And now it's like 10 minutes, you know. So all those skills, I think there's so many skills that get
Oh,
sharpened.
this just speaking, being on
Yeah,
camera.
true. Yeah.
Yeah. All of those things, being able to
Yeah.
put your thoughts together in a way that people understand.
As best as I can. Yeah,
Oh, we all have those days and those moments for sure.
for
So
sure.
thank you so
You're
much. It
welcome.
was so great to walk through that process. And as someone about to go down that road, I
Mm.
found it really valuable myself, and I'm sure lots of others will too. So
Well,
thank you so
thank
much. And we'll have to have you come back when you've written your books.
you. Okay.
Talk about that process.
Well, I'm so honored. Thank you so much for inviting me.
It was great to have you. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Bye-bye.